Edgar Allan, a novel by John Neufeld. Chapter 1. This is a story about my father and about God. Neither is very easy to understand. My father, the Reverend Robert Flickett, is a very tall, very straight man who looks like what King Charles II must have looked like when he grew older and stopped tearing around the countryside of old England. You can tell he has had a lot of fun by the lines around his eyes. Father has a sense of humor, but he can be very serious when he has to be. He can scare you sometimes if you're listening to him during the sermon. He and I used to do a lot of walking together, and he would do most of the talking. Father would say that each man is made up of small parts that fit together to make a whole man. A whole man, Father said, could not divide his life into parts that were lived differently. What this means, I guess, for me, is that going to school, playing around, doing chores, and everything else I had to do is part of the same thing. For Father, it would be his church and family, his life, and all to be lived in the same way. When Father talked like this, I mostly listened. It would have been easier if he had told me to be honest or thrifty or kind. But Father thought he should treat each of us as though we were old as he, which meant that he talked to us as though we all understood him. Sometimes he would leave out things for us to figure out later. Sometimes he would use words that made you want to go look up every other one in the dictionary. About God, I can't say too much. No one can, I guess. But he's important in our family, and not just because Father's a minister. My mother, who is tall too and gray, likes to say that God is everywhere, and that you can only hope to understand him by seeing where he is and where he isn't. She thinks that where he isn't is often more interesting and tells us more about him and his ways than where he is. Actually, my mother isn't any easier to understand than my father. It was last summer when all this began. There were 7 of us Ficketts then, including my parents. First there was my older sister, Mary Nell. We call her MN, unless we're mad at her. She was 14 then, and impossible. I didn't like her very much, but maybe I was being too rough. I've been told I'm a harsh judge sometimes. She had a problem, Mary Nell. She didn't like being a minister's daughter. She could be mean about it too. I suppose it's because she felt her life had been ruined or something. I never felt that way. My name is Michael, plain and simple, and I'm 12 now. I'm the only child in our family without a middle name. The reason I never felt the same way MN did is that while being a minister's kid isn't always much fun, it does mean you get to do things pretty much on your own. You have to, because the other kids never let you forget who you are and who you're supposed to be. I mean, to them, you're something very goody-goody. You can spend a lot of time trying to prove you're not. So I spent a lot of time on my own, alone. That doesn't mean I'm a hermit. I just don't care for the other kids, is all. The only way I could ever be part of a gang would be by proving I'm really okay, which I really am, and to do the kind of things I have been told not to do. I guess I feel that I never feel mean toward my father. I mean, take the way kids sometimes steal things. Nothing very big or anything, but just taking little things from shops for fun fun of trying and to get away with it. Once, I think when I was 10, I went into the stationery store with some guys in my class. One of them started talking to the old man behind the counter and asked him for something. Envelopes, I think. Anyway, when the man bent down beneath the counter to get what he had asked for, four hands shot up and grabbed everything they could get a grip on. And it was sort of funny. So I smiled and watched, but I didn't take anything. Now you wouldn't think that not taking something would be the worst thing that ever happened. But to these guys it was. I might just as well not even have been there, they said, if I wasn't going to be part of them. I said I was, and said how could I be when I couldn't stop thinking about dumb thoughts like being right or wrong. After all, they should have known me to being a minister's kid and everything. I told my father about this, and he said that sometimes it takes more courage to say no than to say yes. I thought about it for a while, and I forgot about it. I was maybe 10 then. So what I do a lot now, instead of not stealing, is read. I'm sort of a nut on history, English history. I know some things never be able to remember. This is mostly because I'll probably never need to remember them. After me comes Sally Ann, who is now nearly 6. Sally Ann stands for 7 a.m., which was when she was born. M.N., Mary Nell, means midnight. My mother thought of all of this. I have hopes for Sally Ann. She's smart and patient and sort of scary about everything. She sees more of things than I do, and if she could, she'd probably write all this down a lot better than I will. Because though I try to remember as much as I can, there were a lot of other things going on in my life besides just this one thing. Sally Ann would never. Which is to say, I sometimes think Sally Ann does have eyes in the back of her head, and I envy her. Anyway, she's my favorite. Tiny and bright-eyed and funny because she doesn't yet know how she looks to other people. Then there's that next to last was Stephen Paul. Naturally, it's 7 p.m. He's almost 4 now. There's not much to be said for Stephen. It's too early. So far though he's okay, and he doesn't give anyone except Sally Ann any trouble. And that's only because she insists on trying to teach him things. I don't think Stephen cares a lot about learning. Last came Edgar Allan, EA for early afternoon. He was the youngest, was sort of, cute. He was black.